Come on, Gardner. Come on, Gardner. Come on, faster. You've got to beat Keith. This is going to help you beat Keith.
How's this going to help me beat Keith?
I don't know how it's going to help you beat Keith, but I think it's going to help you beat Keith. Come on, don't disappoint him. Kiss it. Kiss him. Do it again. Come on, you can do it. Say after me. Beat Keith.
I'm going to beat Keith.
You're going to beat Keith.
I'm going to beat Keith.
We're going to beat Keith. You're going to beat Keith.
I'm going to beat Keith.
Beat Keith. Hello and welcome back to the Flat Pack, brought to you by the Racing Post here in the box in Leeds. My name is Ross Brierley, and this is the show that takes you through the flat season and hopefully picks out the best and brightest of angles throughout the year. And as we start to slip into autumn, or not summer as I like to call it, and it all becomes kind of grey and unrecognisable, we've got a bumper week of group race action from the UK and Ireland to go through, and we'll also be looking back at last week's action as well from the likes of Haydock, Ascot and Kempton as well. Once again, it is the same old bunch of nerds going through the racing, or as we're known in Spain, El Tres Amigos. If we were the three amigos, I think you, Keith Melrose, would be Chevy Chase.
I was thinking Chevy Chase.
Yeah, I think you'd be Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
I think I'd be Steve Martin.
You would be Steve Martin, and that leaves, I forget who the other guy was.
I was going to say Matt Gardner would be the Singing Bush.
The Singing Bush, or the Invisible Swordsman.
Oh, the Invisible Swordsman. Yeah. Or possibly Martin Short, which was
Martin Short, that was his name, wasn't it? He turned up in one of the terrible sequels to the Santa Claus.
He's been in a lot of things. Yeah, him and Steve Martin have got a new show, which I've been meaning to watch, which was supposed to be very good, called Only Murders in the Building. So there you go. It's available on the 48th streaming service that you have to sign up to now. Yeah. But you can't because it costs £20,000 to watch everything. This, however, is free on YouTube. So if you do appreciate it being free, press the like button, whichever one it is down there, one side of this. Put your comments in, subscribe, get the analytics going, because it is free. And it's mainly free because of our sponsor this week. And we are sponsored by Fun Facts, the wonderful personal organiser from the early 90s, which I found in my attic.
Brilliant.
This week.
We found out it's literally older than Matt Gardner, that, didn't we?
It is older than Matt Gardner, yeah.
2 years older than me.
This is 2 years older than you. This is coming for your job. So throughout the show, we'll be having some fun facts from our Fun Facts.
Lovely.
And if you do want to buy the Fun Facts, please put a bid in the comments below.
You were going to write in it until producer Dan suggested it might be worth a bit of money. It's in pristine condition.
It is absolutely pristine. This is it's a time capsule of the 1990s.
It's even got Timmy Mallett's birthday in there, and I was appalled to find out that he was the same age then as I am now.
Yeah, I think Timmy Mallett, I think he's Cambridgeshire Day this year. Timmy Mallett will be 68 years old. Which is remarkable. If you don't know who Timmy Mallett is, good for you. Good week? Good week?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Sprint Cup week, obviously a week where I was watching closely, so yeah.
Yeah. Sprint Cup for the Sprint Duke.
The Duke of Sprints, yeah.
Yeah. The grand old Duke of Sprints. And plenty of two-year-old races. The nurseries are about to explode, Matt, so you are giving up sleeping.
Ducking for cover. Yeah, loads of good two-year-old stuff. Both that we just had over the weekend, loads to come this back end as well. Not just nurseries, novices, all that sort of stuff. You get really excited about these kind of 3-year-old prospects as much as anything. So yeah, loads for me to get stuck into at the moment.
What do you move on to when during the winter? Do you go into hibernation?
I just go into a cupboard.
Yeah.
Stay there for 3 months. No, all weather.
Right. So you are under juvenile handicap full stop.
And then, well, I'll be doing some other all-weather stuff as well.
Right, okay.
Usually the shorter distances,
Usually sprinter type stuff, yeah.
So you basically do my job as well come the winter, so I can just swan off and do what I think.
Yeah. Fair enough. We start the show with one lesson learned, and we'll also get some comments and quotes from Fun Facts. No, not really. The viewers at home. If you do put your comments in below, then we will hopefully read them out. Some good ones last week. Keith Melrose, what have you learnt from last week's Fun and Games?
4 times out of 5, it's a pace bias. Just a general observation for life. I was watching the Sprints at York on Sunday. They had 3. We had the good handicap, the 3-year-old handicap, the listed race, and then an apprentice handicap at the end. And you watch the first 2 and you think, oh, so they're all going the far side here. There's obviously that's what's happening in this race. Then in the last race, near side, 1-2, and it's a pace bias.
It's never a draw bias.
almost
occasionally a draw bias.
Occasionally a draw bias, but that's 4 times out of 5, it's a pace bias. Like we say over jumps as well. It's like 4 times out of 5 you want to be on the front. Only 1 time out of 5 do you want to not be near the front or on the front. And pace bias is what you're going to get at York. We talk about low draws being favoured at York. It's a bit of a function of what they tend to do. Generally speaking, you want the horses that can blast off and keep going.
Yeah.
So that was another one. I mean, it's not new particularly, but it was a lovely little demonstration.
It was a perfect encapsulation of that on a slightly quieter card. Mm-hmm. You got to that was your main focus.
Yeah, I almost smiled at the third race when I saw what happened. I thought, oh yeah, this is a lovely little demonstration of something we've had before.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Keith has reiterated that pace bias at York. Matt Gardner, what have you learned?
A lot of the time form's easier to quantify than potential. And the Cyrenia Stakes at Kempton was just a really good example of where the market overvalued the potential in the race and undervalued the established form. So we talked last week about Mischief Magic having a lot in hand and a lot more potential really than a lot of his rivals. He was 103 RPR going in. Most of the horses that he was running against were sort of mid to high 90s horses and didn't really have too many hopes of kind of being much better than that. But you got just under 2 1/4 to 1 about a horse who stood out on form pre-race and long term is going to be by some way the best prospect as well. Obviously, sometimes you get you get races that are stacked with potential, and you kind of got to weigh that up. But that was a good example of, you're getting a much bigger price than the form entitled him to be, and you just kind of got to remind yourself to take advantage of that a little bit.
It reminds me a bit of the thing that said there's no eureka moments because essentially a eureka moment, what people perceive that to be is it comes out of nowhere, whereas actually what it is it's a gradual build-up, and then eventually everything comes together and you go, okay, it all makes sense. And what often happens with potential is people think, this could improve exponentially, and you kind of think, yeah, but not in one run. Like, yes, this horse could improve 7-8 pounds per run for 2 or 3 runs, but if you've got 1.5 stones to make up on the market leader, and they run to form or improve even slightly, they're not going to do it. So the idea of potential is almost, it needs a cap, doesn't it?
And we've got to contextualise it often by the horse, by the person that trains it, etc. We watched Kanjar win at Haydock on Friday. He's a horse that's he's improving by that handful of pounds every time, despite still looking like he doesn't know what he's doing particularly.
Yeah.
And there's some horses that will improve from first run to second, 30 pounds. So, there is no magic bullet in these things. Even potential is something you've got to stick on a curve, really.
Yeah. Well, there's your Jamie Vardys and there's your Wayne Rooney's, isn't there?
Well, yes.
Sometimes you start slow and peak late, or you get everything on your lap the first 10 years of your career and steadily go downhill.
Rob David Seaman, that's you.
That's you done. Job done. I think my lesson was that when you say pace biases on not for life, they're just for Christmas. That doesn't make sense.
No, you had a good one. It was this thing said the same thing. Pace biases lead to
what was it? Something like pace bias leads to
horse bias.
Horse bias
leads to
which
track
leads
bias.
to track bias.
Yeah,
and that masquerades as a
track bias.
Track bias.
a fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's a horse is like favoured at that track or whatever it is, like York, for example.
Yeah.
Specific type of horse.
Well, I think what happened last week, what I like is when you've got a big meeting on a Saturday and you've got a few days to run up to it, like Doncaster this week, but Haydock last week, you had your Thursday, you had your Friday, your Saturday. Thursday, round track in particular, anything that got on the speed down that near side rail, they turned into the home straight, you couldn't get near them. And suddenly you're thinking, oh, is it the ground's, the way the ground is, the way the track is right, and whatever it is, however they've laid it out, they've watered, oh, there's a track bias. But there isn't. It's just that those first few races, maybe jockeys are a little bit cautious working out how the track's riding over the course of 3 days, and it means they don't go quick in front, which means the ones in front have got an advantage, which then changes when jockeys go, well, we don't want that to happen again. So it's also about noting that these things are prone to change and human psychological bias as well. And it happened at Gorham Park last week on the same day. It happens every meeting at Gorham Park. First 4 races, God, this is a front runner's paradise. Back end of the card, the jockeys go, well, we're not having this being a front running paradise. And then all the closers dominate. So it is, even when you think you've found something, it can be a very short-lived window to take advantage.
I think those things get combined with Chepstow's been a good one this year. He had to be on that near side rail. That's a very different thing to what happens with the pace bias. That is just a good strip of ground. Those two aren't the same thing, but they sort of get amalgamated a little bit when they shouldn't do.
You can do, yeah. There's a few examples where it genuinely exists first, for instance, but most of the time you're looking at pace.
Got a few comments from last week's show. John Jenkins, who's been a regular viewer, and thank you. I think John's probably the most consistent commenter on the show, so I appreciate you coming back, John. And he had a great weekend. He put up, I think, 4 horses. 2 of them went on runners and the other 2 won. So Crystal Caprice and Mostadaf with Hamaki and Reach for the Moon being pulled out. So good shout, John. Ben Harris said he enjoyed watching with the subtitles on, with horses running from Hey Doc and Appleby horses running for Dolphin. Go Dolphins! Mark Smith says, great show, lads. Really loving the flat pack. He said, for what it's worth, he really likes Minzol in the Sprint Cup, so he had a good week as well. David Walsh says he loves the show, listens to it whilst walking the dog. Keep it up. I assume he's talking to us, maybe the dog, I don't know. Green Cell 1 found it last week. Good stuff. Thanks, Green Cell 1. Hope you come back this week. Tom Hercombe moved to Sarbeck from last week. He said he's now 0 from 6 at a mile or further and yet keeps going off favourite. If only there was a good 7 furlong campaign, eh, guys?
Oh, yeah. This again.
We'll be coming back to it later on in the show. An armchair jock with the most ironic username, or apt username, said there are so many bang average jocks around the moment, the likes of Kingscote, Mitchell, Probert, Egan, Fallon, Hornby and Stott, who wouldn't have got a ride 20 years ago. Now, I would say that's because they would have been babies. Legally, they would have been unable to ride horses in a professional capacity. So I think that's definitely holding them back.
Absolutely, yeah. Yep. Talk about overjudging potential.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So fair play to that. But armchair jock, again, perfect username though.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no hiding place there with that name.
Well, I mean, we're all armchair jocks, aren't we? Really?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Is that offensive to you?
No, absolutely not. No. It's I don't particularly like to hear it sometimes, but no, that's fine. I've been down here long enough now. I've heard it all.
And Louise Burrows got in touch on Twitter to say, which was good, which means that somebody does watch to the end of the show.
Yeah, that's what delighted you most. The fact that one of the last things said in the show got picked up on. Somebody saw it to the bitter end.
They did. Mostadaf and Mischief Magic. I can't believe I didn't put Minzal in.
That's true. Did you fancy Minzal?
I thought he was the danger. I backed the second, so
okay.
That would have been perfect. But thanks for everyone for getting in touch. Please do put your comments and your lessons down below, and we will stick them on next week's show. Let's take a step into the past then with a look at last week's racing, brought to you by Fun Facts. We'll start off with a fun fact from September. Did you know that the highest speed on a skateboard was recorded at 71 miles per hour in the USA? No, you didn't, but you do now. Speaking of speed, it was the Haydock Sprint Cup on Saturday, and Minzal absolutely bolted up on what was incredibly fast ground, stupendously fast ground, so fast that half the horses who were entered on Saturday didn't bother to turn up. But was Minzal flattered? Is he the new Sprint King? Let's find out with the Sprint Duke, Keith Melrose. Minzal has been threatening a performance like that for the best part of 18 months now. He beat 2 slightly more exposed individuals in the shape of Emiratiana and Rohan, and he did it in pretty eye-popping fashion.
He certainly did. He was very impressive in the end, and one of the lessons I nearly had here was what perspective is the best, because we said after Minzal won the Hackwood on this show, well, I think that's him going from boy to man maybe now. We said after the Morris de Guest that he might have been the best horse in that race, and we sort of poo-pooed that last week because Highfield Princess won the Nunthorpe. But and then come the day on Saturday, because there was a context of 16 other horses there, you sort of forgot that a little bit.
Yeah.
You forgot that this was a horse that was starting to come good. You forgot those things about it. And I wonder if sometimes your perspective as you're watching the horse, not live, but is that a better perspective when you've got all these other horses in front of you? And I think it might be, because he clearly is coming good.
Well, I think, but that's kind of what we are missing on this show, to be fair, from our own perspective, is we go through this kind of stuff and then we go, oh yeah, we did say that a few weeks ago, didn't we? Because, the point of this is detached from the hype of either straight after the race or the excitement of looking at a race on a Saturday morning. Detached from that, you can make better judgments, but we need to get better at marking down those judgments so that next time when they come around, we go, oh no, we have said twice this year that Minzal is possibly the best sprinter in the country. Because, he kind of proved it.
Why did I forget last Tuesday, though, is what I'm sort of asking. Why did I forget? Because I could see Arc Power, because I could see Harry 3, because I could see Emiratiana working back to form.
I think I wrote a thing for the Racing Post Royal Ascot preview book that we did, talking him up for Royal Ascot. And then when he got beat at York, I kind of went, fine.
But then if we put all the things together in one, we've said York's pace bias. You've written about him earlier on. Maybe Ascot's not necessarily his track either. Basically, all the dots were there. We just didn't draw them into a winning shape for the weekend.
No, absolutely.
But he clearly relished the conditions. He clearly relished the track. It was spectacularly fast. I had it, allowance-wise. I'm not saying that all the non-runners were necessarily justified, but it was very, very fast ground. In fact, it was the fastest ground since this meeting last year. So I don't know if there's a bit in the back of their minds about the past Sprint Cups where it goes insanely soft overnight and then they don't water and then they get insanely fast ground. But horses who appreciated it last year, Island Brave won again, Triple Time won again, Emiratiana finished second. So it clearly suited some horses, that rattling fast ground, and it suited Minzal. What also suited Minzal was the fact that he had a perfect battalion of front runners in front of him, which sucked him into the race. And you were looking at both the jockey cam, but also the sectionals, to suggest that basically everything's set up for him to record that perfect performance.
Yeah, our old friend Jockey Cam's back again. It's taught us quite a lot this year, but it was Holly Doyle on Rohan, and she tracked Minzal, and it just sort of underlined that. I mean, she slipstreamed him perfectly, but that Minzal ran pretty much the perfect race, and the sectionals back that up. So he was in the perfect position, but then obviously that doesn't win you the race. You have to go and actually win it. And the fourth furlong, every horse was between 10.6 and 10.9 seconds for that furlong. And then he's the only horse for the 2 furlong to the 1 furlong pole that dips under 11. Everything else is, I think the next best was something like 11.18 and 11.21 or something like that. So the ability to sustain that burst is what took him clear and what made him stand out from the field. No other horses could match him furlong for furlong, but then they couldn't sustain it for that second furlong, and that's what marks out a proper kind of Group 1 performance.
It's always been his thing, this turn of foot, isn't it? It's what won him at Newbury, it's what impressed at Deauville, and it's what, even though the sectionals aren't seeing a fast finish, they're saying he was able to sustain the burst, the pace. 2 successive under 11-second furlongs, it's pretty good. And Rohan followed him all the way through. It was Holly's all wearing the jockey cam.
She's wearing the jockey cam, yeah.
And he's not, I don't know what they think about ground for that horse, but it was almost a little bit of an Ascot trial from that horse. I don't think I'd ever back him for a Group 1 necessarily. But it was that sort of run, wasn't it, where at Ascot, where there's more tiring going on, that sort of ride might get a bit more joy.
So it looked like he was going to go past Emiratiana, he didn't quite either. So it's,
he was pretty closely matched. Obviously he was sat behind Minzal, but sectionals he was pretty closely matched with Minzal, but then he just couldn't sustain it for that second furlong.
Not as good a horse as Minzal, basically.
But, yeah, exactly. And the good, that's what marks the good horses out. And it's what was really interesting from a sectional point of view about this race is that they're really good at showing us what we can't see 9 times out of 10. But this, you went, well, I think that's happened, and then they just went, yeah, that's definitely happened, and it was just really good to see it played out.
It gives you real confidence in how you've assessed the race to see it on the clock as well.
I mean, you could completely disregard the sectionals, if you like. For example, if you are judging interference at say a major global meeting, you could just watch the videos back and ignore what the numbers are saying. You could do that, right?
Listen to the jockey, and
you could say, we've watched a lot of videos. I'm not looking at this numbers crap. Just do that. yeah, just hope for the best. Alternatively, you could look at the numbers. There's a few other things that I thought were worth mentioning regards to Minzal, though. One was Jim Crowley in sprints. He seems to have this, I think I forgot to copy the stat on, but I think over the last couple of years, he's won something like 30% of the sprint races that he has partaken in. It's somewhere between 25 and 30%. I mean, his percentage was double what everyone else was.
His job lends itself to that a little bit.
It does, but he could still cock it up.
Well, it's very true.
He's getting it right quite often. And I think the other thing that's worth mentioning is maybe in sprints as well, because when something goes wrong, you don't get much of an opportunity to put it right in the race. And there's just a case of Minzal just eventually getting it right, and that experience of like I said, at York and at Deauville, Highfield Princess got away, and thinking, okay, I need to track the front runners, but I need to, it's that kind of experience of running in Group 1 contests over that trip, and eventually it does come good. Because like Rohan's been running in handicaps on various grounds over different trips, Emiratian's been running over 5 and over 6, and some of those horses have been running over 7. Minzal's almost perfected how do you win a 6-furlong Group 1 over the course of 3 or 4 runs.
It could also be to do with the very next race, Lookout Louis, they gave him 3 lengths of a start over 5 at the same track and didn't peg him back. There wasn't a Lookout Louis in the race. They didn't let anything get away. Art Power got to the front and was a bit keen, and there wasn't a horse that got away from him in any sense. So it became a race of turns of foot, and that's when Minzal's class really told.
But if all those horses that ran against Lookout Louis ran 2 or 3 times throughout the season, again against Lookout Louis, then a couple of times they'd cotton onto that.
Well, absolutely. Yes, that's a very good point, actually. Alligator Alley would not be ridden like he was in that race if they ran it again even 20 minutes later, because that was clearly just an overconfident ride from Watson.
Yeah. Anything else to mention from Haydock?
I'll give a little shout out to Owen Burrows as well while we're on Minzal. 30% strike rate this year, obviously a reduced string compared to what he's had before. 7 races listed or above, I think, and the John Smith's Cup. That's a blooming good return.
I think really there's a slight, you can never make a second first impression comes to mind, because people initially thought, this Owen Burrows guy doesn't know what he's doing. And it was obviously in a fairly turbulent time as well. And he's had the spotlight's been taken off him slightly, and he's been able to knuckle down and show that actually he's a very good trainer.
He is. He was a sort of trainer that he was sought after to buy horses off him a few years ago. It's not anymore.
He was almost a shorthand for wait till I get sent to the sales. It's a Group 1 horse on breeding, and he can't train him.
Absolutely. There's no better proof of your talent than doing that, because people can say what you like, but you judge a man by what he does, not what he says, and they're not paying the money they were for those Burrows horses, because Burrows is not leaving as much on the meat on the bone as he was. No, nothing like it.
So that pretty much sums up Haydock and Minzal. Elsewhere, we had Kempton and Ascot. A few other things to mention. Godolphin had a pretty good weekend in general, but also specifically with their juveniles. We briefly mentioned Mischief Magic, but Naval Power won at Haydock as well in fairly remarkable fashion, I thought, for a horse who was long odds on and looked to have everything else cooked on form. And I thought he was going to get beat quite comfortably, and then he got out of a pocket and rocketed home. And I want to contrast the Appleby versus Bin Saror factor now. They've got that kind of fast versus slow burn approach sorted out quite nicely for the boys in blue at the moment. Appleby's got your 2 and your 3-year-olds. Side Bin Saror gets your 4 and your 5-year-olds, and they seem pretty good at what they're doing. It's
sort of always been Bin Saror. He was never, when he used to get those early ones, he couldn't get it right with them a lot of the time. But he could develop these horses at 3 and 4 and 5, and he's still doing that. Now he's got somebody else to do the legwork with the younger horses for him.
So it's just enabled him to concentrate on what he's good at.
Seems like it.
Seems like it. Yeah.
Because I was having a look, he's got a 21% strike rate this year. Side Bin Saror, obviously First View won the London Mile final. Real World, Morge, Dubai Future, Soft Whisper, Passion and Glory have had a good season for him. But horses aged 4 and older his last 2 years. He's 58 from 2,676, 40 quid profit, actual versus expected of 1.11, which, bearing in mind the amount of, in theory, you see a well-bred 4-year-old in a handicap at Ascot or whatever, trained by Side Bin Saror. I was surprised by how good those numbers were.
That's very true, actually. And Real World's a good example, I think, of the difference in approach at Godolphin, because when he came through in a very Bin Saror fashion. But the level he's reached now, he's probably more of an Appleby horse. And he's not achieved what his ability maybe commands this year, because Bin Saror's campaigning maybe isn't quite so aggressive as Appleby's.
He's also 11 from 42 with older horses who haven't won a race before. So which suggests again, if you see, he's been running for 2 years, not won a race, that's actually a positive for him because of his slow burning style.
Well, it used to be a bit of a running joke, didn't it? That you'd find, we just happened to find one that's bred to win classics, and but that was when he was a principal Godolphin trainer, that was always a bad thing. Now, because he's basically the second trainer, it can be a good thing.
But they do have some good juveniles.
Naval Power, I think he's next year's horse rather than this year's horse. It was a bit of a messy race. He didn't go much for the pace, and he got caught in a pocket, and he really didn't get that much time to sort of hit his stride. And the second did improve a little bit. Mischief Magic we've touched on. I I think he's potentially quite good. If I were Charlie Appleby, which I'd like to be, that'd be good.
Yeah, very similar.
Yeah, I'd try and I'd keep him at 6 furlongs. I'd resist the temptation to go further. I don't want to fall into that trap of, well, he saw it out strongly, but yeah, it was a turn of foot that won in that race. But yeah, just another one to add to what looks a really strong crop.
Noble Style, Mischief Magic. What's the comparison? What are we looking at?
Noble Style's way ahead at this point. He's £7, I think, better on RPRs at the moment, and he's probably got a higher ceiling. I think I'd be looking Mischief Magic maybe a 115 horse in time, whereas Noble Style, if he's not a 120 horse at the least, then there's something gone wrong.
Fair enough. A couple of things to mention. Mostadaff, all-weather horse, 3 from 3 on the all-weather. An RPR of 122. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. He is allergic to grass, after all. But he did look a completely different animal. Now, what do they do with him? Now, they go back to the grass and gets beat, send him to the dirt in Maidan and hope that he
handles that as well.
Or we have a Group 1 on the all-weather lads.
Maybe so. It's hard. The pattern's not set up for it, is it, at the moment? And everything sort of group quality on the all-weather tends to be in winter, and the seasons are divided in a way they maybe shouldn't be. And we look at something. I was saying before, we compare it with something like the St Leger, whereas St Leger doesn't look a great race this year. I'm sure if you took the Group 1 status off the Leger, it would just nosedive. But equally, if you gave the all-weather a Group 1,
what if you move the Leger to the all-weather?
Oh, spicy. Not sure that's necessarily the oldest classic goes to.
I'm not sure that's on the cards, but
goes to Newcastle or something.
Picture it: oldest classic, newest surface.
Oh.
Or oldest classic, newest racecourse. Send it to what is the newest racecourse?
Chelmsford.
Chelmsford.
Chelmsford. Leger at Chelmsford. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Sylvester de Souza kicking on at the end of the back straight and all these mile 6 races except Chelmsford. But without getting into like these fantasy scenarios, I genuinely think that there is an element of build it and they'll come and knock it down and they won't sort of thing, and that a Group 1 on the all-weather, look, it's not going to get 12 runners because Group 1s are struggling to attract horses, but it would get the patronage that it would deserve. And equally, if you took the Group 1 status off a race that's hanging on by its fingernails, you'd see that it was Emperor's New Clothes all along a little bit. So yeah, I wouldn't be averse to it just because you're not getting the horses now, because you would attract horses. Mostadaff would be campaigned. He'd have been campaigned differently from his early days to now if that Group 1 on the all-weather existed, almost certainly. So I think we maybe also need to stop seeing the all-weather as a winter game too, because that is not going to attract those good horses. They go to Maidan instead. There's a lot of broad opportunities for horses that would otherwise be good on the all-weather. So maybe a rethink along those lines might help.
Yeah, fair enough. Quick mentions for Fresh, winning again at Ascot, and Danny Tudhope, who is fantastic in those big field races.
Really interesting race. Mark Fresh up, I think. It was unusual for a big field handicap at Ascot, where they didn't really go much of a pace. And we've said before that it's good to be held up at Ascot, but he did really well. And you could definitely see him going in again in a similar race for sure. And
a curious case of where there wasn't much pace. What pace there was in the high numbers, and it was dominated by the low numbers.
Yeah, very rare to see that at Ascot, isn't it?
Yeah, which I love to see from a race reading perspective, where you look at it the first time and you go, okay, I need to watch this again. But Danny Tudhope in big fields is exceptional, and his record on Fresh is exceptional as well. But he's actual versus expected in double figure fields is pretty much 0.98, I think, from 16 runners or more, which is pretty damn good. And a quick mention for Zealot, who won at Kempton, who I think is possibly the best handicapped horse I've ever seen.
Tearing your hair out if you're the official handicapper for that one, I think.
Yeah.
Bred to be a 90s 100 horse, not sent off at shorter than 80 to 1 prior, gets smashed up on debut for a new yard and scoots up.
Yeah. Wins by half the track. There's a speed figure that almost...
You talked about the speed figures. You had to time it 3 times. You couldn't believe it?
Well, it couldn't be. I was like, this horse can't be rated 47. It is impossible for you to record this figure whilst being rated 47. Fair play to Eve Johnson Horn.
In the realms of handicapping, you can't put that horse up enough.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah, because you put up a stone, he's still in 0 to 65. He's still in 0 to 60s potentially.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So fairly remarkable stuff. That wraps up last week's action then. We'll be looking ahead to a bumper week. And we've also got the hot list as well coming up right now. 3 hot races then, which might well throw up some winners, starting off with potential Flying Childers clues in the shape of the listed race won by Treasure Trove at York a couple of weeks ago. The winner has gone in and again since. Squealer won at York on Sunday, and Bolt Action went down fighting in a good race at Ripon. Treasure Trove and Bolt Action go potentially for the Flying Childers this week, and that could be a couple of the best pieces of form. New London, of course, is going to be a hot favourite at Father Ledger, so keep an eye on him, but justifiably so if that Gordon Stakes at Goodwood is anything to go by. We've had winners out of that this week. Of course, Cresta bolted up at Windsor last week. West Wind Blows won over in France, and of course Dover Legend and Hu Yamal have also given that a little bit of a boost. But not only the winner, but Masakila drops down in grade into a conditions race at Doncaster this week and could be interesting. And finally, the race won by Mischief Magic, of course, who we've discussed on the show. That Goodwood novice has thrown up winner after winner, and we have a few interesting entries this week. Supreme King, Hale End and No News are all entered in novice company, and Celtic Champion could also be very interesting as well off the back of that Salisbury win. There's 3 hot races. Hopefully we'll throw up a few winners in the next 7 days. Looking ahead to this week's racing then, if Billy Joe Armstrong, the lead singer of Green Day, was a racing fan, he might say, wake me up when September starts, because it's a cracking week. It really is. Doncaster, Leopardstown, the Curragh, and we've got group races coming out of our ears. And we're going to start off with Doncaster, and I'll turn to resident basket case of the panel.
Lovely.
There you go. Keith Melrose. Keith, your line, please.
My line?
Yeah.
From Green Day or about the podium?
The one you were going to bring in.
Oh, do you have the time to listen to me whine?
There you go.
That should be the title of this show.
That should be it. Yeah. We'll get the Green Day. We'll get the Green Day racing fan crossovers, which are me and you.
Even I'm not a massive fan.
You're not a Green Day fan, no. Fair enough. But 4 days on Town Moor.
Day one is Scarborough Stakes and the Ledger Legends, and I couldn't even name you a third race on the first day. Well, obviously when I see the car, I'll go, it's got that race, and it's got that race, and it's got that race. But yeah, Donny doesn't necessarily need the 4 days, does it? Yeah.
I mean, I quite like it because I like Doncaster.
Yeah.
And I think they, like for example, during the jump season, all their big days are on bigger days for other tracks, and they're kind of the underappreciated.
It's always Cheltenham days during the jump season.
And they've got, the Lincoln gets a bit, why is the Lincoln on now? And then, what's the Racing Post Trophy called now?
Is it still the term for Futurity?
Yeah, that's it, exactly. That's almost forgotten. The November handicap, everyone's like, why is a flat season still going on? But at Doncaster, the Ledger, Doncaster gets a short shrift.
It does.
Producer Dan will agree with me because he lives around the corner and he's Yorkshire born and bred.
And now it gets 4 days and the suddenly we're all going, bloody Donny.
Yeah.
4 days for this.
Yeah. What Donny does have a lot of, though, is very good 2-year-old races. In theory, anyway. The Mayhill, we've got the Flying Childers, of course, the Flying Scotsman, the Champagne. We've got nurseries. We've got a big sales race, which often throws up a group class horse as well. So we're certainly looking for future superstars. Or you are, Matt Gardner. You've got a busy week.
That's the idea, yeah. Some really interesting stuff. Short shelf life for this one, but there's an interesting nursery on Wednesday. Where there's an Ian Jardine horse you might know that won in a good time up at Hamilton hour by hour, running against a Godolphin horse that's kind of looked okay but not that fancy, if you know what I mean. And that's the sort of race where you're thinking, well, that form might not be totally appreciated in the market. But yeah, further ahead you've got the big sales race. Magical Sunset's an interesting one. She's entered in a group race as well.
She's in the Flying Scotsman.
Yeah, but she beat Sakir, who absolutely bolted up. I've watched all the 2-year-old races here, but that was one of the ones where I went, well, hang about, that's a horse. She's. I think if she runs in the sales race, she looked pretty clued up that day as well, and that could stand her in really good stead. Aidan O'Brien's got a load in that Flying Scotsman. Cairo, back down in trip. We mentioned him winning over a mile. Probably not quite wanting that at this point. He's not really that stoutly bred. High Bank for Godolphin. Form works out really well. Once raced, I think, but again, looked really promising. So.
The Flying Scotsman, it's this 3-year-old race of them, isn't it?
Yes.
It's the one where all the sort of slow burners. Frankel won. It's the one Frankel won in the old days, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Nostrum's another one in there as well. Sandown, wasn't it, I think? first time out? Santana or Ascot, I can't remember. But again, form's worked out really well and created a massive impression.
That's the Juddmonte horse.
Juddmonte horse, yeah. So that's a race where you're looking at potential. Definitely. You get a lot of once race, twice race horses coming in with oodles of potential.
Yeah, Kim Ross won it a couple of years ago, I think. Yeah. And One Ruler was in there. It's you're right. They are future.
Because the 2-year-old running the Champagne Stakes.
Yeah.
The 3-year-old's running the Flying Scotsman.
Yeah.
Pretty thin, the Champagne Stakes entries this year. Silver Knot's probably the one that stands out. He's
got 7-4 now.
He's looked pretty good, and the rest that are entered in that don't look up so much. I wonder, there's a Group 2 over Mile Island on the same day, and that's got all of the good O'Brien horses entered in it. Aesop's Fable, that sort of level, and that's kind of absorbed the good ones, and Silver Knot's sort of being left with a bit of an open goal really.
I thought a few are marked off. Indestructible, I thought probably should have won at York. I thought was a Chaldine beater.
Chaldine, yeah.
Yeah, I thought there was a bit of like I've got you here, and then the York pace bias kicked in. I thought Prince of Pillow was a little bit interesting in the Flying Shoulders.
Keith Dalglish?
Yeah, 2 from 2, won over 6 on debut, 5 last time out, 2 very good figures.
Yeah. Races
have worked out quite well. Could be underestimated, I thought.
Yeah, the races have worked out quite well at an ordinary level, I think. But like this would be a bit of a step up for him. But yeah, he has looked quite good. The other thing I thought was quite interesting by our absences, no dramatised in the Flying Shoulders.
Yeah.
That or the Cornwallis were the 2 kind of obvious 5 furlong races for her to run in. So maybe it wasn't the trip that beat her at York.
Other horses, Novakai, I thought in the Mayhill, because we were quite excited about this horse. Then they went to Newmarket and everything went wrong in a weird race won by Lakota Sioux. But I thought back to Doncaster where the maiden was broken. Could be interesting.
Really impressive, wasn't she? I thought she, in the fullness of time, I thought coming out of that Newmarket race, she'd be the best horse.
Yeah.
With a view to next year. She's definitely one to be interested in as well.
Elsewhere on the card, of course, it is the Leger Legends as well. Best race of the week.
My eyes nearly rolled up into my frontal cortex when you mentioned the Leger Legends race, but you did that annoying thing you do, where you
the one.
Well, you do it a lot though, where you reset and tut at something, and then you go on to make a really good case about it. Yeah. It's quite annoying that.
It is quite annoying. My girlfriend does say that it's just because you're good at arguments doesn't mean you're right. And I think that's one of my strengths and weaknesses in life. But there's 2 things to mention. One, I think good horses, as in horses have won it. 8 of the last 10 have won by horses rated 70. Other 2 were rated 69. One of those was rated a stone high on the all the weather. The other one had dropped about a stone in the weights over the course of the season. So basically, the good horses win it, and the form tends to work out because they're not thinking, well, we're going to run in the Leger Legends and set it up for a race in a couple of weeks. I don't know if the enthusiasm or something. It's like the Jump Jockeys Nunthorpe. That threw up loads of winners. Yeah. Everyone is going hell for leather to try and win the Legends
because,
race.
they're trying to maybe do somebody a favour or, something like that potentially.
But they want it to be a good spectacle. It's raising money for charity. It's got to be a good race.
As my only story about the Leger Legends was the one year I was reporting on it as a reporter, and in the paddock afterwards, one of the jockeys came up and just said it's always the right jockey that wins this race, isn't it? But you're right.
Apart from last year, where I smashed the second open.
Was it set up for Robert Winston, that one?
Set off 3-1 favourite.
I suppose it would have been a little bit, yeah. But you can't be angry at the Angry Ants.
No, that is true.
Winning that race, he's a standing dish in that race, isn't he?
He is.
Former champion apprentice, isn't he? Because it's the thing they say about Gary Martin every year. Yeah. Former champion apprentice.
Yeah, he did me. He did me in a photo. Elsewhere on the Doncaster card, of course, we do have the St Leger, which will soon be moving to Chelmsford. We have our way. Is it a new London walkover?
He's a good horse, isn't he? And there's not many. We said before, you don't often get more than one good horse in the Derby. So if you're getting one in the St Leger, then it's probably going to win.
Do you know what I'm going to back in the St Leger? Lizzie Jean. 200 to 1. Ivan Furtado. Broke the clock at Southwell.
Ivan Furtado broke the clock at Southwell, did he?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm doing it. Well, to be fair, I mean, there might be 5 runners. 200 to 1.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
Sneak into third.
And Ivan Furtado, I mean, I've not seen much of him this year because he didn't have that many highly rated horses, but he was a sort of quietly impressive trainer on the all-weather, certainly a couple of years ago.
Yeah. And one thing that I wanted to mention to you as well is the Park Stakes are continuing love affair with the 7 furlong campaign during the back end of the season. All the big names are entered, all the big 7 furlong horses. But most importantly, Keith, it's time for me and you. Take my hand. Take it. It's sacred time. Sacred. Say it after me. Sacred.
Sacred.
There we go. It's going to happen, mate.
Dying inside. It's all right, you. Because as soon as I saw it in the running order, I thought, I'm going to end up backing this again.
Yeah. Well, Goodwood, York, round a bend, back to a straight track. Finished second in the Flying Childers, I think, a couple of seasons ago to the Tinkle Horse. You better believe it. I think it was. Could well be ideal.
Well, at Ascot as well, didn't it?
Yeah.
You're doing out power again.
I'm doing
power all over.
This is it. See the show. This show stands a monument to all the times I get roped back into backing horses I should have given up on. It's not even been my lesson yet. One of these weeks, they're unbelievable scenes. It's one of these right in front of my nose and I don't do it. So I'll be back in Sacred again, and I'll probably back her again after that when she
goes for the foray.
When Ross finds an excuse.
And
I'll back her again.
Anything else at Doncaster before we move on?
No.
Track in general. How are we?
Yeah, I've learned a lot about Donny this year actually, and how it's not as biased a front rush track as some. It behaves like Ascot in some ways. Yep. It's not got the big
finish. A baby Ascot until it goes soft.
Well, yeah, but all the tracks that are sort of sandy like that, Doncaster, Ascot, even Musselburgh, they're good. They're tracks for good ground until they're not, because once the rain gets into these tracks, Donny in the winter is a great example. It just churns right. Oh yeah, it can be really deep stuff. So there's a lot to be said. There's a lot like Ascot. There was a horse. In fact, Lethal Nymph won on Saturday at Ascot, didn't he? And that horse has now got 3 wins: Wolverhampton, Doncaster, Ascot.
Yeah. And
I think that's a wee lesson maybe what that horse will suit in time.
Yeah.
And getting bounced out over 6, it turns out.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's for the reflection section, and we've missed our boat there. So let's not dwell on it.
Who knew? Elsewhere, we've got Champions Weekend as well at Leopardstown and the Curragh with, again, just so many group races that I actually look at them and it kind of blends into one. I forget half of them exist. And then when I actually look at the results on the day, I think, oh, okay. And it just exists in its own kind of ecosystem, I think, at the back end of the Irish season, because unlike the Champions Weekend over the jumps, it feels like it kind of comes out of nowhere and then disappears. Whereas Champions Weekend over the jumps feels like a setup to the spring. This is, I don't know, it just feels like a strange one to me. But again, there's potential juvenile clues. There are a lot of group races. We've got everything from sprinters to stayers and everything in between at 2 very different tracks over the course of 2 days. So there's a lot going on. I just always struggle to find an angle in.
I know what you mean. It's a bit like that. Was it St Mark's Basilica and Tarnower last year?
Oh yeah,
two massive figures, a really good race, and it just sort of like.
Well, it got the interference thing crowded it out a little bit, didn't it? But that was a very good horse at Marks Basilica. Yeah. We didn't get to see enough of him as far as I was concerned. But
to be fair, interference at Irish Champions Weekend, especially at Leopardstown, has been, we had the whole Golden Horn incident a few years ago as well. Mother Earth should have won half the track last year. It can be quite tricky to.
You don't think of it for Leopardstown, do you? But that rail, there's a lot of action on that rail, isn't there? And obviously, we've already had we're going to have Vadeni in there, and we've got the favourite for the big races written by Christoph Soumillon, so we're going to have a lot of fun and games there.
Yeah, is it Vadeni to? We're going to have 4 runners again?
He's a very impressive horse, and I was saying, we've obviously got the Arc Trials Day on Sunday as well, and you look at the fields for those races of Amai, the Foix, the Niel, and you're thinking, if Baid doesn't run in the Arc, it's a dead open Arc. I've backed Vadeni at 12s.
Yeah.
After Soumillon came out yesterday and said if he comes out the Irish Champion Stakes well, he might well go to the Arc. Because if he wins on Saturday and it's not looking a very deep renewal, and Baid doesn't run in the Arc, which must be odds on, whether it's a shade of odds on or long odds on, can't really say, but it's certainly odds on. Well, he could go off 2-1 or shorter for the Arc in the end. He's one of the very few really impressive middle distance horses going at the moment. So I'm really excited to see him. Actually.
Yeah, we were both pretty big on him after Sandown, weren't we?
Yeah, I thought he was very impressive.
He's never. You're almost having to reset a little bit because he's never looked an archy horse, has he really? Whereas now, almost by kind of dearth of opposition or whatever, he's sort of morphed into that. Well, actually, yeah, fair enough.
Well, that's it. I looked at it on yesterday morning, and he's 18-1. That means he's not going to run. But the connections have come round to this idea that, lads, the Arc could be there for the taking.
But this is the kind of the story of your 10 to 12 furlong races all season, isn't it? Where you look a week or two in advance and you go, whoa, and then on the day, oh, okay, 4 or 5 runners. And it's, on paper, it looks like, oh, there are a lot of horses to go around. In reality, there aren't. And apart from the Derby, there's not really been one that's promised and then delivered in terms of competition. So is that going to be the case again today? I mean, like you said, you've got 3 races at Longchamp.
You've got horses like Very Elegant, and we've got, title holders in the Irish Champion, but the prices suggest he's not going to run.
It don't like he's going to run now. Can we give Bay Bridge another go?
Here he is. Sacred Bay Bridge double.
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
Clarence is telling me not to back Bay Bridge.
Back on slightly softer. I still can't get that Sandown run out of my head, to be honest. Like you do that. He just looked such a proper horse that day, and he's not. I don't think things have gone right from since. And back on softer ground, whether he finally builds on that, I don't know. But I'll be tempted in for sure.
No, I'll be leaving. But I can step back from that one, I think.
Okay.
You can let you lads have your fun.
Yep.
I'll just let my Vadini Art Bet run, and hopefully he wins well, and I'm in a good spot for that position. I had a look at the Flying Five. It's at the Curragh on Sunday.
More sprinters for you.
More sprinters for me.
This is always another one that gets a bit. It's a Group 1.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's
Group 1. But you build it and they'll come. You're going to get a very competitive race. If that was a Group 2. You wouldn't get much in there at all, but you get a really competitive race. And I've had a look at the Flying Five, sprinters again for me, and it's another good example of like build it and they'll come, because if that was a Group 2, it is a Group 1 obviously, and if it was a Group 2, it would be rubbish. But it's a Group 1, so it gets all these horses, a case of you and all that are coming out for it. I've not had the deepest look so far, but one that did jump out at me, who I've been waiting to have a go over 5, is Diligent Harry. He's about 25 to 1 when I looked, and he's a horse he's been threatening more on his races and not quite going through with it. I think he might be a 5 furlong horse, so he might get a go over 5 furlongs for me. I'll have another good look at that as the week goes on, because it is a race that draws the best of the 5 furlong horses, and you don't even know those horses aren't up to much.
It's a well-placed race as well, with a view to Arc Weekend, maybe Champions Day if you've got one that also sees out 6. You look at it in the right. I know it's Group 1 and it does draw them in for that, but it is a really good stepping stone to really big end of season targets.
Irish Champion informs the Arc. The Arc Trials, they obviously informs the Arc, and this informs the Abbey. Yep. So it's it's a very well placed weekend for the Arc.
That's what this week is, isn't it? This week is the introduction to your autumn.
It is. It's exactly what it is.
Your autumn campaigns. And talking about sprinters, one thing we were talking about Minzile earlier on, getting that experience over several runs in Group 1 company. There's not many horses who've won Group 1 sprints the first time of asking. Past 10 years, we've had Mason, Lethal Force, Jawala, Gold Dream, Mecca's Angel, Twilight Sun, Oxted, and Romantic Proposal.
I mean, that's quite a lot, to be fair. There's not that many Group 1 sprints.
Well, maybe that was over longer than 10 years. Maybe that's longer than 10 years. Okay. When was Mason? Mason feels longer than 10 years ago.
Pushing that, yeah.
I'd say be about 10, yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Maybe slightly more than 10, actually, yeah. But I'd have said early 2010s for Mason.
Well, I don't have the exact stats here, but the actual versus expected with no runs in Group 1s was 0.79. So it was a tough. I thought it was a fair enough thing to mention.
I mean, it might well be right. It was one of those.
I mean, you've got Oxted, Romantic Proposal. When was Twilight Sun? That was 5 years ago?
Yeah,
that was a while ago now.
So you've had 2 horses in 5 years.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, tough graduation into better company, yeah.
My point was that Romantic Proposal might one of these won that the first time of asking. This to me looks the consistent plan every
and she was starting to look really quite progressive, wasn't she? And she didn't turn up at Ascot. Was it ground at Ascot? She didn't turn up. She was in at Ascot. So yeah, they'd obviously decided to just draw stumps for a while and do the autumn campaign.
And I just want to mention the boys from Ballydoyle. Because this could be a whole section in itself. They might have to cut this out because it's too long. But who knows? But are we gradually seeing the, not waning of that star necessarily, but they're no longer the go-to guys for unbeatable back-end 2-year-olds who are going to turn into classic performers, or even, I know they've won the Irish Champion 3 years on the bounce now. But apart from that, it's pretty thin pickings this weekend. I think it was last 5 years, Leopardstown and Curragh, or maybe last 10 years this weekend. They've only had 34 winners, loss of 105 quid, 0.75 actual expected. They only had 1 winner last year. They only had 2 in 2020. Joe Lyons, Jessica Harrington, Patrick Toomey. A lot of trainers who are winning races that used to be, O'Brien will have one for that, surely.
The races are over shorter trips is maybe part of them. I mean, there's no Irish, there's Irish Leger is that this weekend, but you know, a lot of, you know, the Ballydoyle ones will dominate from a mile and certainly a mile 2 up, and there's not as many races.
There's the Blandford, the Moy-Glare, the
Moy-Glare they used to dominate, didn't they? Yeah.
There's loads of races for them. Yeah, they just don't win them.
Yeah.
They just don't win them anymore.
We were talking about this before, weren't we? And I think part of if anybody's been an internet dilettante over the last 2 years during the COVID thing, we hear about lagging indicators, don't we? And I think this is possibly a lagging indicator of Galileo just getting old.
Yeah.
We're still seeing his progeny out there because he was siring quite late into his life, but he was an old horse by the end, and maybe that's what we're seeing now. We're starting to see that as Dubawi starts to dominate as a sire. We're maybe just seeing the end of the Galileo era.
Yeah. I think it's also maybe a little bit of we all got caught up in that O'Brien domination, and actually when you stripped it back, a lot of the horses were good horses, but they were kind of 120s, mid 120s horses. Yeah. He's had very, very few 130 plus horses, full stop, throughout his career. Whereas obviously,
was it PR then? Just very good PR.
Well, no, I just think
on top of they had good horses, but
they had good horses, but then it got kind of blown out of proportion because they kept winning good races. Yeah. Whereas the level that we're running to wasn't outstanding. It was good for the level, but it wasn't amazing.
It was weight of numbers. Yeah. They had, a good. They had the cut. You always recognise the Magny or the Smith, the Tabor Silks. So there was that. There was O'Brien himself, who is an interesting character. I think there's a lot of that. You're right. PR was part of it. But they had a critical weight of these good horses, these mid-120s horses. Yep. And maybe that critical mass isn't there anymore.
Okay. One horse you're most excited about this week then?
This week? Portland. Tan Mawi's in the Portland.
Yep.
Now everybody mentions the Portland all the time because every horse that finishes strongly over 5 or doesn't quite get over 6, everybody always says, Portland. Tan Mawi's a really interesting horse. The Foss last run against Emperor Spirit last time. Emperor Spirit sort of had the rail at Foss last. He was a really fast horse over 6. It was a day when I don't think many came back. Mm-hmm. And Tan Mawi picked him up.
Yep.
And the two of them were miles clear. I think that's really good form. Tan Mawi's an unexposed horse who tanks through his races. A couple of times he's just blobbed. Because I think he's maybe a fragile, late developing horse. But if he gets it right, Doncaster is the sort of track that will suit him. He's the horse in the Portland I'm interested to see.
Magical Sunset, mainly because I love that horse that she beat on debut, that Sakir, and I'm hoping that he's as good as he looked the time after. I hope she runs in that sales race because I think that'll be ideal for her. So, excited about her.
Okay. And I think Novakai probably in the May. I hope Novakai turns up in the Mayhill because I want that debut form to be shown again. And hopefully that Newmarket run was a mere blip. With a capital P at the end.
That was explosive.
That was a big one. It's a big P. By popular request, although not of Dan, who has to edit this episode, and we've already been waffling too long. Hello, Neil Francis. We've got Beat Keith coming back, guys. Beat Keith. Can Matt Gardner redeem his tattered reputation? Let's find out. That's right, back by popular demand, and by popular demand I mean one person in the comments asking if it will ever come back. It's Beat Keith, everyone's favourite quiz show, where Keith Melrose takes on Matt Gardner to see who knows more about this week's racing than the other one. And the answer is usually me, because I've written the questions and I've taken way too long delving into stats that neither of these two have any right mind of knowing the answer to. But let's see if I've got the level right this week with the return of Beat Keith. First, let's take the temperature of the panel. Keith, how are you feeling?
A bit warmer than I was because I've got the Barry McHugh silks on.
Yeah, Barry's been looking a little tighter than I think before as well.
Are they looking tighter, are they?
That's your holiday, I think. Is
that the holiday? I mean, any pound's going to show on these things.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. You top weight, I think you are at the moment. Matt Gardner, how are you?
Good. Ready to smash this little fella in the head.
That's fair enough. Yeah, taken out of context, that's going to get you in trouble, I think. But sentenced to 5 years with probation. As we know, 10 questions then about last week or this week's racing, sponsored by Fun Facts. Are you ready, guys?
Yeah. Okay.
Things on the buzzers. Okay, here we go. Minzal recorded the second best RPR of winners in the past decade in the Sprint Cup. Who was top?
Harry Angel.
Harry Angel it is, correct, Mundo. How many non-runners were there at Haydock on Saturday because of the ground?
23.
Oh, not 23, can you get closer?
24.
It was 34, but you were not close enough. No one gets a point.
Okay, so that was a bit cynical. That's all.
That was very cynical. Pat Dobbs won the Serenia Stakes, but how many group winners is that for him this year?
2.
It's not 2.
3.
It's not 3 either, it's 4. You didn't deserve it and you don't get it. Sound of Iona. How many times did Sound of Iona run last week?
2.
Incorrect.
3.
3 is correct.
It's reversed.
I think that's hoisted by your own petard.
There's a bit, yeah.
24 grand in prize money for Sound of Iona. Rohan finally got Group 1 black type in the Sprint Cup, but what was the ratings band for his first handicap win at Newcastle?
0 to 65.
Oh, incorrect, Keith Melrose.
0 to 70.
Oh, you went the wrong way. It was 0 to 60, Matt Gardner. It was 0 to 60 at Newcastle. It's come a long way since then. Flightline, the world's best racehorse? Possibly. How many lengths?
19 and a quarter.
Oh, it wasn't.
19 and a half.
It was 19
Was it
and
19?
3/4. Oh dear, almost. Okay. How many group races are there in the UK and Ireland this week?
12.
Incorrect.
15.
Incorrect. It's 18. 18 group races in the UK and Ireland this week. The Leger Legends takes place this week. Can you name 3 winners of the Leger Legends, jockey-wise?
Oh.
McCoy, Harding, Kinnan.
Correct, Timondo. That's a point to Matt Gardner there. The Flying Childers coming up this week. Fillies are the top 2 in the betting for the Flying Childers this week. How many fillies have won the race in the past decade?
3.
It is incorrect, not 3.
2.
It isn't 2, it is 1. It is 1, and that was Clive Cox's Heartache a few years ago. And the final question here. The Irish St Leger has been won by 1 British horse in the past decade. Who was it?
Thingy Panther. Brown Panther.
Brown Panther is correct.
That in the last decade?
Brown Panther.
I was like, Black Panther, no, blue.
Blue Panther. What colour was that bloody panther? Matt Gardner beats Keith, everybody. Matt Gardner beats Keith.
And Rob Llewellyn will be delighted.
He will.
He will. He wanted in. He showed us. Not only did he request it back, he showed a partisan nature as well, which I didn't particularly appreciate. But
are you saying that's what's taken your eye off the ball?
No, absolutely not. No, it just meant I really hacked off to got beat.
Absolutely. And we know how joyous you find it when you win, Keith Melrose. It must be painful to lose to a child.
This is Are You Smarter Than a 10-year-old all over again.
This is Are You Older Than a Fun Facts? Well, to cheer you up, would you like a final fun fact from the Fun Facts?
Yeah. Oh, I was good at guessing the punchlines on the jokes earlier.
Oh, we could give you a joke or a
Let's see if I can guess the punchline on the joke.
Okay. What's black and white and red on Christmas Eve?
Mint humbug.
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Penguin.
Oh. Tell you what, that's now that eBay value in that has dropped $5 since you've just said that joke. It's worse than your ones that you come out with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sell stock in fun facts.
My level is fun facts writers from the 90s. And finally, one more. This has probably changed in time. Name 2 pronouns, boy, says the teacher. Who, me? Correct. And finally, what kind of ties do pigs wear, Matt Gardner?
It's pigsty.
It's pigsty. Oh, thank you to Fun Facts for all their hard work.
Generous sponsorship.
A generous sponsorship. A now defunct company from the 1990s. Although if we sell this might pay for Dan's fee for the day, perhaps.
You've cheapened Dan there. Poor old Dan.
£20 we pay him. But that's it for another week. You two, you're not back out of shame for losing.
No, that's right. Yeah, I'm going to have to give myself a stern talking to.
Yeah. And Matt Gardner, you're...
I'm going on holiday with a spring in my step after that.
You are indeed. Yeah. Where you off to? Centre Parks with your parents?
I'm afraid not, no.
Okay, it's a shame because we do love that lazy river. But thank you for watching another edition of the Flat Pack. We'll be back next week with two unknown panellists to go through 18 group races and try and predict the winner of the Air Gold Cup. That is why Keith and Matt are taking the week off. Don't forget, if you've got this far, like, subscribe, obey.